Hey everybody, Jimmy Smith again, this time UFC 317. Nice pay-per-view, and some really interesting, some very close fights, odds-wise, outside of the main event and co-main event. So interesting fights, not a ton of name power, but a compelling main event for sure. So let's start on the main card, UFC 317, Pton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Pton Talbot is one of those guys where early on in his career, you went, okay, this guy could be a contender. A lot of physical talent, but also had that X factor, right? Good at communicating with the crowd, good-looking kid, explosive, good style, but ran into his last time out, the first loss of his career, happens to everybody, 9-1 now after Raoni Barcelos beat him. And that was the biggest name of his career, for sure, was Raoni Barcelos, in terms of UFC experience, right? A well-rounded guy, a veteran guy who had been around for a while, and he failed the test. Now, he lost by decision, so didn't get blown out, but you saw the difficulty he has against skilled guys who won't allow him to get his game going, right? Who take away his explosiveness, who take away his range, right? A really great fighter knows how to make adjustments, and also they have a big toolkit, so there are a lot of ranges at which they are good. He's a medium range guy who's very, very explosive. And if you can take that away from him, you can win. The question is Felipe Lima the kind of guy who A, has that style, B, has a lot of UFC experience? He does not have a lot of UFC experience. Only his third fight in the UFC. Muhammadjon Naimov, when he made his debut, won by rear naked choke in that one. That's the biggest name so far. Beat Miles John, yay, by decision. But a guy who kind of made his bones all over the world, hasn't lost since his first fight. He's 14-1, one of those guys who start off with losses, hasn't lost since then. He's a slight favorite here. So it's one of those things where, do I go with the young, talented guy who hopefully has bounced back from his first loss? If he were a significant favorite, I'd say no. He's not. He's the dog. So Felipe Lima, despite this only being his third UFC fight, is the favorite here. Yes, he's more experienced overall in his career. Once again, 14-1 as opposed to 9-1. So he's more experienced, but he's not more experienced in the UFC. Neither guy has fought any names of note. Like I said, Barcelos was the best name that Pton Talbot had fought up until this point. I'm going with the odds, and I think I would go with the upset here, which is Pton Talbot. I am betting my chips that he's one of those guys who has a future in the UFC, and his first loss will make him better. If he's a broken man and the first loss is just, oh my God, what am I doing here, blah, 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 he's going to lose, and he's going to lose quickly. So the idea that he's completely shot by that one loss, what I would do is I would take Lima and I would take him in a short fight. Because if you walk in there mentally out of it, you're not going to last long at all. I'm going the other way. I think it's going to be Pton Talbot. He fights smart, probably wins a decision. So maybe you can make plus money there because Pton Talbot, over the course of his career, 9 wins, 8 finishes. He tends to get it done. I think he fights a more conservative fight. He fights a more mature fight. He just wants to get back in the win column. So I say it's Pton Talbot by decision in a slight upset. Right now it is Felipe Lima minus 185. So yeah, a significant upset, right? Pton Talbot in plus 154 money. That's on DraftKings. So moving on, Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. This is a coin flip fight. Joshua Van, a slight favorite, minus 118 to Brandon Royval's minus 102. This is another fight that kind of comes down to octagon experience. Now, Van has been in the UFC for a surprising amount of time. Does have some decent fights. As I'm seeing right now, when I switch back over to the Sherdog card, because I'm going back and forth, this fight is actually after the Beneil Dariush fight, but I'm dealing with it first. Brandon Royval, Joshua Van. Brandon Royval is a really solid fighter and has been in there against really elite names. He tends to get it done by decision. So he's kind of become the master of the split decision. Last time out, against Taira, that was a split decision. Before that, against Brandon Moreno, split decision. Split decision against Bontorin. He's a grinder. He's very tough. He's very well-rounded, but he's not going to blow anybody away. Van is much more of a finisher, but Van hasn't taken on elite talent. Also, when you look at Van's schedule, this is his third fight of 2025. His last fight was in June. We're still in June. It's crazy, the turnaround on this fight. This is a guy who fought, I believe, June 7th. I'm bringing it up right now. I think it was June 7th when he fought last. It's fighting June 28th, literally 3 weeks afterward. Yeah, June 7th. He fought Bruno Silva, beat him by TKO. Folks, for people who don't know, who've never trained for a fight and all that stuff, you go through a camp, you peak, you fight, and then you got to recover and then come back. You got to kind of like wind that process up again, especially if you fought maybe like a week later, you're kind of still in shape from the previous camp. Maybe you could do that. 3 weeks is actually exactly the time you would dip and start getting back into shape right now. So the idea that this is a quick turnaround, he's been very active in 2025. He is an excellent finisher, but he's taking on a guy who's good at going the distance and winning close decisions. As you move up in any weight class, you got to get used to the tough, difficult, grueling fight that is very, very long. That's the kind of fight that Brandon Royval is very good at fighting and winning. So if he had had a full camp and a lot of time, sure, I might go with Van, depending on the odds. But with Van being a slight favorite, an incredibly short camp, you're basically still in shape from your last fight, and you're hoping that carries you through. But the problem is you're also carrying all the injuries. Everything was wearing you down before the last fight. You haven't had any recovery time. Brandon Royval's a veteran. I go Brandon Royval. Once again, the king of the split decision, so probably by decision, maybe late stoppage, because there was no recovery time, and he might still be hurting from his last camp, so maybe gets it done in the distance. So, in a slight upset. So, 2 upsets in a row. I'm going with Brandon Royval on this one. So, going back to the card. Once again, it was flipped over on DraftKings, so pardon my order here. But Beneil Dariush, Hanato Carneiro, or Hanato Moicano, whatever you want to call him. This is one of those where these are two guys who are in a similar position in their careers. What I mean by that, Beneil Dariush has always been right there, but never the guy at 155 pounds. He puts together good streaks, and right when it's, oh man, we might have it, pardon me, my phone's ringing, let me just silence that. The idea that he's always been just below the elite of the elite at 155 pounds. And he went on a great run between losing to Alexander Hernandez and the Charles Oliveira loss. But when it was Charles Oliveira, okay, winner gets a title shot, he gets knocked out. After that, Arman Tsarukyan, boom, he gets knocked out. Both fights, by the way, you know, in the first round, the Tsarukyan fight was just after a minute. So he's right there. He's never been the guy at 155. You can say a similar thing about Hanato Moicano in that he's always kind of been right there and has just never been the guy. And he came up from 45. So the idea, lost to Jose Aldo, lost to Korean Zombie, Rafael Fiziev at 55, Rafael Dos Anjos. Like, he's always been there. And then last time, of course, Islam Makhachev he just wasn't ready for Islam Makhachev, in my opinion. Talented guy, good striker, very explosive, very aggressive, always fun. But once again, right below that elite level at 155 pounds. So they're in a similar spot. They are similar ages. I think they're both 36 years old. So it's kind of like they both went through their wars. Who finds the motivation to keep going when I don't think either guy gets a title shot before the end of their careers? So who has the motivation to keep going, and who has the style to kind of make this fight happen? Style-wise, I think it's Beneil Dariush. And what I mean by that is it's good, and then I think he has the counter for the style of Hanato Moicano. But he's also, he's good at slowing a fight down. He's a veteran guy. The size, the takedown, the cage control, right? The ability to put you on your butt and keep you there. Very good submission game, good ground and pound, solid on the feet, right? I think Moicano's a little bit better, but it's this idea that I don't believe Beneil Dariush, a veteran like Beneil Dariush, has been through so many big fights, is going to go out there and get in a firefight. And I don't think he's going to leave his neck exposed or do anything that's going to set up an easy submission for Moicano. I think it's going to be, I'm a little bigger than you. I think Beneil Dariush is a naturally bigger 155-pounder than Moicano. A lot of cage work, a lot of close takedowns, a lot of top control. Very careful. Remember, he's coming off 2 knockout losses. Hands up, chin down. If you're going with Moicano, you're going with a couple of things. Number one is that you're facing a guy who's been knocked out twice in a row. That does leave a psychological impact on you. period. Even if your brain's in good shape and you're not, getting dizzy, it's a matter of, like, you start getting paranoid, right? So, the knockout might come. You get a little afraid of it. And when you're afraid of it, that's when it happens, right? So when you look at the losses of Moicano against Islam Makhachev, sure, front choke sucks. I got front choke today. It doesn't matter, right? I just got back from jiu-jitsu. You get front choke. I'm still here. The psychological impact of getting submitted it's not a huge one. Getting knocked out's a much bigger deal. So if you're going with Moicano, you're going with, you're dealing with a guy who got knocked out twice. Moicano does have some excellent kickboxing. He tends to be very, very aggressive. It reminds him of the knockouts, and he takes the fight over. Certainly a possibility. I am going with Beneil Dariush. I think his size is more of an advantage. I think his experience, especially at the elite level, is a big advantage. At 155 pounds, I'm looking at the odds. It's a coin flip. Moicano, a slight favorite, minus 115 on DraftKings to Beneil Dariush's minus 105. So, Moicano's a slight favorite, so I'm going with the dog. 3 dogs in a row. This time, Beneil Dariush. I think it is a late fight. Again, because strategy-wise, that's a way to beat Moicano. You don't want to get in a firefight. You want to make it kind of boring and ugly and in the clinch, and I think that's what Beneil Dariush does. So he gets back in the win column over Hanato. Moicano, probably by decision. That'd be the smart move to me. So let's move on to the meat of this card. Alexandre Pantoja over Kai Kara France. This is the first one where we get odds that are very, very skewed. And it is right now on DraftKings, Alexandre Pantoja minus 238 to Kai Kara France's plus 195. This is the result of a dominant champion, right? And what I mean by that is not that he dominates everybody, but Alexandre Pantoja keeps winning. And whenever you keep winning, they have to recycle guys, right? You got to go back in the bin and go, okay, who hasn't fought this guy? When you look at it, Kai Kara France is 1-2 in his last 3 fights, coming off a win, but lost 2 before that. Since the first loss to Brandon Moreno, he's 5-4. Now, those losses were to elite talent, for sure. Of course, 2 to Brandon Moreno, blah, 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 blah. It's this idea that, he hasn't had a great win streak since taking on super elite talent. He's talented in his own right. He can do a lot of things. But numbers-wise, this is not a guy who, under normal circumstances, once again, 1-2 in his last 3 fights, you'd put in a title shot. They just don't have anyone to go to. And I haven't seen, in his last few fights, any indication that Pantoja, the years are starting to catch up with him. He's starting to slow down. He's still looking very, very good at 125 pounds. He's clearly, he's a big dude. Apparently the cut's not killing him because he's making it every single time. The Asakura win, he looked fantastic in that fight. Same thing for Urseg and Royval and Moreno before that. Dude's a grinder. He just is. Takes you down, makes your life miserable. If you screw up, he's going to take your back and finish you. If Kai Kara France wins, it is going to be on the feet, more than likely. I don't see him catching Pantoja on the ground. The guy's really outstanding jiu-jitsu, but there's a reason the odds are as skewed as they are, right? I think Pantoja is the better fighter. The numbers bear that out. I think the style bears that out. Their last few performances bear that out. Where can you make money? When you look at it, the under is plus 130, under 3.5 rounds. Sure. All right, that's the only way I see you kind of making money on this. If you do take Alexandre Pantoja, take him on the under 3.5 rounds. Yes, he's not a great finisher, but against a guy who's had some mistakes in his last few fights, maybe he takes advantage and does what he did last time, which is get position and get a rear naked. So the only way you're going to make money is taking the under on this one. But the smart pick is Alexandre Pantoja, so I'm going with my first favorite. Now, the main event, Ilia Topuria, Charles Oliveira. I'm a little torn on this one. I told you guys, if you listen to this channel at all, when someone is a future champion, or they're getting right there, there's almost always an it factor, right? There's almost always a, whoa, this dude's a problem. The first time I see him, second time I see him in the UFC, I go, okay, keep your eye on this kid. I thought that about Ilia Topuria from the beginning. I went, this guy's going to be a problem. Is he going to be champion? Maybe, maybe not, but Jesus, I think he's an absolute monster. When he housed Ryan Hall, right, I was like, yeah, this guy's legit, right? Destroyed Bryce Mitchell. He's just, dude's a monster. And he's getting better every single time he fights. So, I've had my eye on him for a long time. I think he's very well-rounded. I think he is technical. I think he is sharp. I think everything he does is very, very crisp. He doesn't waste a lot of movements. He has a great inside striking game. And what I mean by that is he cracks and it's real tight. You try and get loopy. Max Holloway tried to throw these loopy punches. He was right inside of them with his own shots. Doesn't leave a lot of daylight. Meaning he boom and he's back. It's hard to find time to get him. He has excellent timing. His footwork is very, very good. He was powerful at 145. He might not have that at 55. There are certain times, Bryce Mitchell most notably, where he just beasted him once or twice. When it was, you think you're big, and just crushed him physically in that cow catcher position, if you remember that one. I don't think he has that at 55. I think he's going to be a bit more of a precision striker. He is a precision striker already. But once again, I've said on this channel many times, changing weight class, a power puncher isn't always a power puncher again, right? They hit guys at 55, they hit at 45, and the guy's still standing there. What do? You throw more combination punches, right? Where one shot didn't do it, so I'm throwing 3 or 4. I think he has to become more of a combination puncher, which is what Conor McGregor did when you move up to 55 to take on Eddie Alvarez. In a very similar way, Charles Oliveira, much like Eddie Alvarez, is a hittable guy. Eddie Alvarez, I've called Eddie Alvarez fights. He's dropped in almost every single fight. Charles Oliveira gets cracked in almost every single fight. So when I look at his fight stylistically, even 4 or 5 years ago, I probably would have picked Charles Oliveira, but even then, Charles gets hit a lot, right? Against Michael Chandler, against Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, he got rocked in all of those fights. Came back, rocked the other guy, got in a scramble, and choked him out. That's what he does. Okay, of course, he knocked out Michael Chandler. But the idea that you're looking at a guy who's very hittable, taking on a guy who can crack, who is very, very technical and tight and sharp, that's not a good combination, right? Also, this was in his championship run prime. Charles Oliveira was getting hit and dropped. Might be a little bit past that. We've seen him slow down a little bit. Everybody talks about the equalizer of his ground game. He has the best, probably, submission game for MMA, maybe in MMA history. But Ilya ain't bad on the ground. He's very, very good. And also, when your whole job is don't get submitted, don't get in a scramble, don't get submitted, don't give up bad position, you can do that. Anyone watching this who has jiu-jitsu experience, you can stall a guy who's a lot better than you. If you're a good purple belt and you're taking on a good black belt, and you just go, I'm not getting submitted today, you'll probably get swept. You'll give up good position, blah, blah, blah. You'll probably get beat, points-wise. But if you make it your mission to not get tapped out, you won't, in a lot of times. In MMA, it's a similar kind of thing when someone has a better submission game, like the Damian Maias of the world. Colby Covington had no interest in getting in a jiu-jitsu battle with Damian Maia. It was just, don't get submitted, keep the pressure on him, and beat him up. That's it. That's all you got to do. And I can point to a million examples where the superior jiu-jitsu guy, the other guy just went, I'm not getting submitted, but I'm not getting in a jiu-jitsu battle with you, and I'm going to answer back with strikes. A la Ryan Hall versus Ilia Topuria, where, Ryan Hall was going for every funky move under the sun. Ilya's not trying to counter with any jiu-jitsu of his own. He just beat him up the whole time. And this is a different weight class. It's not going to be that easy. But it's this idea that Ilya has half a job in jiu-jitsu. Don't get submitted, right? Charles has to get good position and submit him. He has a much steeper hill to climb. On the striking side, Charles is no punk. He's a very good striker. Justin Gaethje said, nobody ever hit me as hard as Charles Oliveira. But I don't think he wants to get in a striking battle with Ilia Topuria. I really don't. I don't think that natural size advantage, because he's a little bit bigger, I don't think that translates. I don't think it's like, in a square-up battle, I'm a little bigger than you. I think you're fighting a guy who's sharper, and that's the difference. You don't want to strike a sharper guy, even if you're bigger, which Charles Oliveira is. So I'm leaning definitely toward Ilia Topuria, but these odds are stupid. They're stupid. Right now it is Charles Oliveira plus 350, Ilia Topuria minus 455. And they set the over-under at 1.5 rounds in a 5-round fight. So they making money on the under, right? Usually if someone's this heavily favored, which is Ilia Topuria, you can safely take the under because if they're that much better, they're going to finish him quickly. Well, when the over-under is a round and a half, it's a really short over-under. I am on record saying I believe Ilia Topuria wins, but that's my pick. Is it worth a bet? No, it is not at these odds. At these odds, I would not, as a huge fan of Ilia Topuria, I wouldn't bet on Ilia Topuria having to put up, what is it right now on DraftKings, $455 to win $100. Charles is too good for that. He's too dangerous on the feet and on the ground to take a chance like that. I thought, okay, when this fight was first announced, like, all right, maybe a 2-1 favorite. Almost 5-1. Are you kidding me? So my pick is Ilia Topuria. Is it worth a bet for the purposes of this of gambling? Absolutely not. Would you take Ilia and the under because Charles Oliveira tends to get cracked early? Only way you'll make money. Like I said, they made the over-under a round and a half. Over-under 2.5, under all day. 1.5 is real quick. A veteran like Charles Oliveira can last more than a round and a half, even if he's getting beat up. But sure, right? Plus 114 on the under. Only way you're going to make money is take Ilia Topuria with the under and hope he cracks Charles Oliveira early, because once again, Charles has been hurt early in previous fights. But I think Ilia Topuria walks out a champ at 155. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'll talk to you soon.